The cold, pre-dawn air seeps through the edges of my old windows, clinging to me like a stubborn doubt. 5 a.m. My apartment looks like the war room for my own personal war. Except no one knows it exists. My double life is a tightly kept secret. Laptops litter the table, surrounded by a chaotic landscape of half-empty coffee mugs, each stain a testament to another sleepless night, and a constellation of sticky notes covered in lines of code, potential server pathways, and reminders about investor calls. My perfect future is built here in this mess. Tonight, or rather this morning, it's all coming together. The new module for my startup, Synergy Solutions, just launched. Months of relentless work, fueled by caffeine and the burning need to prove something, mostly to myself, but, yeah, to my father too. My heart pounds a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This is it. This is the tipping point. Everything is about to change. I watch the live update screen, the numbers ticking upwards as the system processes its first orders. Each transaction is a tiny jolt of pure adrenaline, a proof of concept, a sign that my vision is real, a life raft for those whom need it most. A wave of pride washes over me, so powerful it almost knocks me off my feet. A raw, visceral emotion that chokes me with its intensity. And I can't share it, not with anyone in my real life, not with my family, not with anyone who knows me as AmITheA Harding. The shrill ring of the phone cuts through the silence, shattering the fragile bubble of my triumph. My stomach clenches. I know who it is before I even look. Robert Harding flashes across the screen. My father. My boss. I shove a coffee cup aside, sending a ripple of dark liquid across the table, and frantically minimize the Synergy Solutions dashboard. I'm a digital contortionist, always ready to switch personas at a moment's notice. AmITheA? His voice, even through the phone, carries the same weight of authority it always does. A reminder that Harding Industries, our family business, demands my unwavering attention. Financial reports are due, quarterly earnings are being scrutinized, and the ever-present expectations loom over me like a suffocating shroud. To him, I'm not a creator, an innovator, a builder. I'm just another cog. Another replaceable part in the well-oiled, meticulously maintained machine of our family legacy. Any ambitions I have outside that narrow, predefined path are seen as distractions, frivolities. I inhale, trying to steady my racing pulse. Exhale. Yes, Dad, I'm working on them. They'll be ready. The words come out smooth, practiced, a lie I've perfected over years of careful maneuvering. But my mind is a million miles away, still buzzing with the thrill of Synergy's launch. See that they are, he says, his tone clipped and devoid of warmth. We have a board meeting at 7:30. The line goes dead. No pleasantries, no good morning, no pretense of a father-daughter relationship, just a command. Another vibration against the table. My phone again. This time it's Jake. Jake is the only person who knows the full, messy, complicated truth about my double life. He's my confidant, my CTO at Synergy, and my voice of reason, a role he takes very seriously. His messages are always direct, cutting through the carefully constructed illusion I maintain for the world. The message reads simply, running two lives isn't sustainable. You know this. Inevitable is creeping closer. Don't say I didn't warn you. He's right, of course. Balancing both lives is like walking a tightrope over a chasm filled with sharks. The inevitable is creeping closer, snapping at my heels, whether I want to admit it or not. Eventually, something has to give. By 7:30 a.m., the Harding Industries conference room is filled with the usual cast of characters. The same mahogany table, the same stiff chairs, the same stale atmosphere of quiet desperation masked by corporate jargon. My father commands the room, his presence radiating an almost palpable sense of power. He's a force of nature, a man who built an empire from the ground up, and he expects everyone around him to bow to his vision. Beside him sits my sister, Lauren, poised, polished, perfectly groomed. She's the presumptive heir, the golden child, who can do no wrong in my father's eyes. Every glance, every nod, every carefully chosen word reinforces the narrative. Lauren is the future of Harding Industries, And me? I play my part. Quiet, compliant, blending into the background like an expensive piece of wallpaper. I observe, I listen, I try to make myself invisible. The discussions drone on. Strategies are laid out with calculated precision, financial projections are dissected with a surgeon's focus, and my father's pronouncements are treated as gospel. My contributions, however, barely register. Any ideas I dare to offer are dismissed with a polite but firm wave of the hand. My input is ignored, my perspective deemed irrelevant. It's a familiar pattern, one I've perfected over the years. Endure, observe, don't rock the boat. But beneath the surface, the pressure is building. It's like trying to contain a volcano with a teacup. My phone vibrates again, hidden in my pocket. A message from Chloe. Chloe is my COO at Synergy, my best friend, and the fiercest advocate I've ever known. She's the fire to my ice, the chaos to my order. She's also the reason I haven't completely lost my mind trying to juggle these two lives. Her message reads, "Investors are ready to move forward. Your decision is needed ASAP. We're talking life-changing numbers, AmITheA. A choice, a brutal, impossible choice. It stands before me, stark and unyielding. The weight of my father's expectations sits heavy on my shoulders. The ingrained sense of duty, the years of conditioning, the fear of disappointing him. It's all there, a leaden anchor dragging me down. But for the first time, it's not just about playing my role, it's about choosing the future I want, the future I've built." My fingers curl around the phone, my heart pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat. I glance up at my father, his face a mask of unwavering authority, and then at Lauren, already basking in the role that's been laid out for her since birth. The life I've been conditioned to accept is right there, in front of me. A gilded cage, perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. Yet, the future I've built in secret, the one born from late nights, endless sacrifices, and a fierce belief in my own potential, is finally within reach. All I have to do is grab it. But can I? Or am I doomed to forever play the dutiful daughter, the compliant employee, the invisible woman? The morning meeting continues. A relentless march through spreadsheets and jargon. Stale coffee, rigid formality. My father holding court in the center of it all. But this time, something is different. A subtle shift in the atmosphere, a barely perceptible tension that hums beneath the surface. He turns to me, his eyes glinting with a strange light. "AmITheA," he says, his voice louder than usual. "I've decided to give you a larger role in the company." The words sound promising, almost generous. But I know better. This isn't about giving me real power. It's about control. It's about keeping me in line. Lauren's expression hardens instantly. The mask of polite indifference slips, revealing a flicker of pure, unadulterated anger. She has always been the golden child, the anointed one, the only one destined to take over the reins of Harding Industries. Now, suddenly, she sees me as competition, a threat to her carefully curated destiny. The discussion shifts, focusing on upcoming projects and potential acquisitions. I see an opening, a chance to prove my worth. "I've been researching some new technology," I say, trying to keep my voice steady. "It could modernize our operations, streamline efficiency, and give us a real edge in the market." I launch into my presentation, armed with data, charts, and projections. "I've done my research. I know what I'm talking about. I know this technology could revolutionize Harding Industries," but my father barely looks at it. He gives it a cursory glance, then dismisses it outright with a curt wave of his hand. "We've always done things this way," he says, his voice laced with condescension. "We don't need any fancy new gadgets. We're doing just fine." He clings to tradition like a drowning man clings to a life raft, refusing to see that his outdated methods are slowly sinking the company. His condescending glance says it all. "I don't trust you. You don't understand how this business works. Stick to what you know." Lauren smirks, feeding off my frustration. She revels in my failure, in my inability to break through my father's wall of stubbornness. By the time the meeting ends, I feel the walls closing in. My startup is gaining traction, investors are circling, and I'm still trapped in this suffocating family dynamic, where my opinions don't matter, my ideas are ignored, and my potential is deliberately stifled. My phone buzzes as I step out of the conference room. Chloe. She doesn't waste time on pleasantries. Investors are ready to commit, she says, her voice urgent. But they won't wait forever. If you want your dream to survive, you need to make a decision. Now. My stomach twists into a knot. I've built Synergy Solutions from the ground up, pouring my heart, soul, and every spare moment into it. This is my shot, my chance to prove myself, my chance to build something real. But if I leave Harding Industries now, I'll be burning bridges I can never rebuild. I'll be shattering my father's expectations. I'll be risking everything. A tap on my shoulder snaps me back to reality. It's Ethan. Ethan Davies is the company's business consultant. He's been working with Harding Industries for years, brought in to advise on strategy and streamline operations. He is in his early 40s, with an Ivy League background. He's always been observant, sharp, and incredibly perceptive. But this time, something feels different. His eyes are fixed on me, studying me with an intensity that makes me uncomfortable. You seem preoccupied, he says, his voice low and measured. Is everything all right, AmITheA? My heart pounds in my chest. He's too perceptive. He sees something. He knows something. I'm fine, I mutter, trying to sound casual. Just a lot on my mind. He raises an eyebrow, unconvinced. Something you're not sharing? My stomach twists. He's too close. If he suspects anything, it's only a matter of time before he puts the pieces together and tells my father. It's nothing, Ethan, I say, forcing a smile. Really? He studies me for another moment, his gaze unwavering. Then, he nods slowly. All right, AmITheA, but if you need anything, you know where to find me. He walks away, leaving me feeling exposed and vulnerable. The walls are closing in. The clock is ticking. My secret is a fragile thing, and it's about to shatter. As if the pressure wasn't enough, Lauren corners me later that afternoon in the hallway outside my office. The false pleasantries were gone, and I brace myself for the worst. She doesn't even pretend to mask her anger. Her eyes are narrowed, her jaw clenched, and her voice drips with venom. What was that about this morning? She hisses, her voice low and furious. Trying to undermine everything our family has built. Playing the hero? I was just trying to offer a solution, I say, trying to remain calm. I thought it could help the company. Help the company? She scoffs. Or help yourself. Don't think I don't see what you're doing, AmITheA. You're trying to steal my spotlight, trying to take what's rightfully mine. She accuses me of being selfish, of trying to undermine the family, of making them look incompetent. Your so-called innovations are unnecessary, she says, her voice dripping with sarcasm. The company is running perfectly fine the way it is. I can see it in her eyes. She sees me as a threat, someone trying to carve out a space that she believes belongs solely to her. She always gets what she wants. Why would this time be any different? I almost laugh at the irony. For years, I've played my part, sacrificed my own ambitions for the sake of the family business, and now she's painting me as the villain. You know, Lauren, for someone who's supposedly so confident in her position, you seem awfully threatened, I say, my voice dangerously low. Her face flushes with anger. Don't you dare try to turn this around on me, she snaps. I know what you're up to, AmITheA, and it's not going to work. This company belongs to our family, and I won't let you ruin it with your little games. Her words cut deeper than I want to admit. I've spent so much time trying to prove myself, trying to earn my father's respect, trying to make a difference in a world that refuses to take me seriously. And now, for the first time, I see the cracks forming in the foundation of the life I was supposed to want. The cracks are small, almost imperceptible, but they're there, and they're growing wider every day. The cracks in the foundation weren't just personal anymore. They were starting to show in the company itself. The first sign came in the form of an urgent email. It landed in my inbox late one evening, the subject line screaming, "Critical, client retention at risk." One of Harding Industries' biggest clients, a long-standing partner who accounted for a significant portion of our annual revenue, was threatening to walk away. Their reasoning was predictable: outdated processes, slow turnaround times, and an unwillingness to adapt to modern solutions. They cited competitors who were offering faster, more efficient service, leveraging technology to streamline their operations and provide a superior customer experience. I read the email twice, feeling the weight of it settle on my shoulders. This wasn't just a minor setback. This was a crisis. And it was a crisis that had been brewing for years, ignored and dismissed by my father's stubborn adherence to tradition. The problem had been staring him in the face, but he had refused to see it. Now, it was finally catching up with him. I knew exactly how to fix it. I knew how to streamline the client's workflow, how to automate the processes that were causing the delays, how to provide them with the cutting-edge technology they were demanding. But there was no way my father would let me implement anything on my own. He would dismiss my ideas, question my judgment, and ultimately reject my solution. He always did. I didn't have time to wait for his approval. I didn't have time to go through the endless bureaucratic hoops. The client was on the verge of leaving, and the company was on the verge of losing millions. I went home that night, fired up my laptop, and deployed a streamlined version of the software I had been working on for Synergy Solutions. It was a customized solution tailored specifically to the client's needs, designed to integrate seamlessly with their existing systems. It was risky. If anyone found out, the consequences would be dire. My father would be furious. Lauren would be vindicated. I would be ostracized. But I couldn't sit back and watch the company crumble when I had the solution right in front of me. I couldn't let my father's pride destroy everything he had built. I deployed the software, crossed my fingers, and prayed that it would work. Within hours, the client's workflow improved dramatically. The automated processes eliminated the bottlenecks that had been causing the delays, and the streamlined system allowed them to access information and track progress in real time. Their complaints disappeared, their frustration subsided, and their account was saved. I thought I had gotten away with it. I thought I had managed to pull off a miracle without anyone noticing, but I was wrong. The next morning, as I was heading into my office, Ethan stopped me in the hallway. There was no small talk, no pleasantries. His face was grim, his eyes narrowed. "I saw the changes," he said, his voice low and serious. "I know they weren't part of the company system." My stomach twisted. He had seen through my deception. He knew I had gone behind my father's back. "What are you talking about, Ethan?" I asked, trying to sound innocent. "Don't play dumb, AmITheA," he said, his voice hardening. "I've been analyzing the system logs. I know you deployed a new software solution for the client. A solution that doesn't exist within Harding Industries." He wasn't stupid. He was sharp, observant, and incredibly thorough. He had seen the anomalies, the irregularities, the subtle shifts in the system's performance, and he had put the pieces together. "How did you manage to implement a fix that doesn't exist?" he asked, his eyes boring into mine. My stomach twisted. He had always been sharp, but I could see it in his eyes. This wasn't just curiosity. It was suspicion. It was an accusation. I don't know what you're talking about," I stammered, my voice trembling. "Don't lie to me, AmITheA," he said, his voice dangerously low. "I know you did this, and I want to know why." By the afternoon, I knew my secret wouldn't last. I had been walking on borrowed time, and the clock had finally run out. My father called an emergency meeting. The moment I stepped into the conference room, I felt the tension. It was thick, palpable, almost suffocating. The air crackled with unspoken accusations and barely concealed anger. Ethan had told him everything. My father's face was stone. His eyes were cold, hard, and devoid of emotion. His voice was controlled, measured, but the anger was there, just beneath the surface, simmering like a volcano ready to erupt. "How dare you?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. "How dare you make changes to the system without my approval? How dare you go behind my back and undermine my authority?" He didn't see it as a solution. He didn't see it as a way to save the client and protect the company. He saw it as defiance, as a challenge to his power, as a personal insult. Lauren sat with her arms crossed, a smug look on her face. She was enjoying every second of it. She didn't care about the solution. She only cared that I had gone around our father, that I had dared to challenge the hierarchy, that I had threatened her position. She seized the opportunity to accuse me of undermining the family, of making them look incompetent, of jeopardizing the company's future. It wasn't about the business. It was about control. It was about power. And she wanted me out of the way. I tried to explain, to reason, to make them understand that I had only acted in the best interests of the company. But my words fell on deaf ears. My father wouldn't listen. Lauren wouldn't listen. They were too blinded by their own pride, their own ego, their own petty jealousies. I was trapped, cornered, exposed. That night, my mother insisted on a family dinner. She tried to smooth things over, to act as if everything could be fixed with a nice meal and a few carefully chosen words. But my father wasn't interested in small talk. He wasn't interested in apologies. He was only interested in loyalty. He gave me a choice. "Prove your loyalty to this family," he said, his voice cold and unwavering. "Or step aside. There's no room for both your ambitions and your place in this company." He wanted me to choose. He wanted me to renounce my dreams, to abandon my startup, to dedicate myself solely to Harding Industries. He wanted me to sacrifice everything for the sake of the family legacy. He wanted me to be the daughter he had always wanted me to be. There was no room for compromise, no room for negotiation, no room for anything but complete and utter obedience. I stared at him, my heart aching with a mixture of anger, disappointment, and a profound sense of sadness. "All right, Dad," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I agree to your terms." But in my mind, I was already planning my next move. If my father wanted proof of my dedication, he would get it. Just not in the way he expected. A couple of days had passed. An eternity, really. I had withdrawn, become even more quiet and compliant. But inside, I was a whirlwind of thoughts and feelings. I requested a meeting with the board, framed it as a presentation on a structured plan to lead the company out of its crisis. They agreed, of course. They were expecting a predictable discussion on operational adjustments, a few tweaks to the marketing strategy, and maybe a fresh coat of paint on the office walls. The meeting room was packed, the air thick with anticipation. My father sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Lauren, arms crossed, radiated irritation. The board members murmured amongst themselves, oblivious to the storm brewing. They thought this was just another routine presentation. They had no idea what was coming. I had prepared two versions of my presentation. One that fit the family narrative, the one they expected to see, and another that told the real story, the version that would leave them all reeling. The first was a carefully crafted, sanitized update on company operations, full of vague optimism and empty assurances. Growth projections based on outdated data, minor process improvements that would barely make a dent in the company's mounting problems. The kind of presentation that would make my father smile and Lauren nod approvingly. The kind of presentation that would lead the company straight to ruin. The second was a brutal, unflinching assessment of the company's current state, honest, uncompromising, data-driven. It laid bare the inefficiencies, the shortcomings, the missed opportunities. It exposed the outdated technology, the resistant-to-change workforce, and the short-sighted leadership that was driving Harding Industries towards the brink of collapse. It was the truth they didn't want to hear, the truth they couldn't afford to ignore. I started with the safe version, walking through the expected financials, growth projections, and minor process improvements. My father nodded along, pleased with the controlled narrative. Lauren gave me a small, satisfied smile. The board members started to relax, lulled into a false sense of security by the familiar rhythm of the presentation. Then I paused, took a deep breath, and switched the slides. The numbers on the screen shifted. The data told a different story, a story they weren't ready to hear. The color drained from my father's face. Lauren's jaw clenched. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. "This is the reality," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "This is what's really happening to Harding Industries. And if we don't do something drastic, we're going to lose everything." I explained how their refusal to modernize, their stubborn adherence to outdated methods, had nearly cost the company one of its biggest clients. Then I revealed how I had implemented my own system, the very technology they had dismissed, to save the deal. The silence in the room was deafening. My father's face darkened. His eyes narrowed. Lauren's jaw clenched so hard I thought it would shatter. My mother looked away, as if pretending none of this was happening might make it go away. Some board members exchanged uneasy glances, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the meeting had taken. But I wasn't done. I had to drive the point home. I laid out a comparison. What would have happened if the old system had remained in place? and what my system had achieved instead. The difference was staggering, a clear, undeniable demonstration of the power of innovation. Lauren was the first to speak, her voice sharp with fury. "How dare you do this?" she hissed. "How dare you humiliate this family? How dare you make us look incompetent?" She didn't care about the results. She didn't care about the company's future. She only cared about the fact that I had dared to challenge the hierarchy, that I had exposed their failures, that I had threatened her position. "This isn't about me, Lauren," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "This is about the company. This is about survival." My father barely let her finish before slamming his hand on the table, the sound echoing through the room. His voice was calm, but the anger in his eyes was unmistakable. "Enough," he said, his gaze fixed on me. "You've had your say, AmITheA. Now it's time to listen." Before he could say more, the conference room doors opened. Chloe walked in, unannounced, her presence commanding attention. She was dressed impeccably, as always, in a tailored suit that screamed confidence and success. Her eyes were sharp, her gaze unwavering. She was a force to be reckoned with. "Excuse me," she said, her voice clear and authoritative. "I believe AmITheA has an announcement to make." My father glared at her, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "Who are you?" he demanded. I took a deep breath, trying to steel myself for what was about to happen. "This is Chloe," I said, introducing her to the room. "She's both my startup's key investor and a close friend, someone who has believed in my vision when no one else did." Chloe wasted no time. She stepped forward, her eyes scanning the room, taking in the stunned faces of the board members, the simmering anger of my father, and the barely concealed rage of my sister. "I think it's time everyone knew what AmITheA has been up to," she said, her voice ringing with confidence. "It's time everyone knew that she's not just a dutiful daughter and a compliant employee. She's also the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Synergy Solutions," she continued, her voice growing louder. "A company that's disrupting the industry, attracting major investors, and poised to become a global leader." The shock on my father's face was priceless. For the first time, he looked at me not as a daughter, not as a liability, not as a disappointment, but as competition, as someone who had built something real, something powerful, something that threatened his own legacy. He wasn't ready to admit defeat, but he couldn't ignore what I had built. His company was at a crossroads, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't in control. I had changed the game, and now he had no choice but to play. The room was still frozen in the aftermath of Chloe's announcement. My father sat motionless, staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. The realization of everything that had been hidden was slowly sinking into the meeting's attendees. The weight of reality was pressing down on him. His company was at a crossroads, teetering on the edge of ruin, and his own daughter, the one he had dismissed and underestimated for so long, held the key to its survival. Lauren was the first to break the silence. She scoffed, shaking her head, her face twisted with fury. "This is ridiculous," she spat. "This is all some kind of charade. You're just trying to show us up, to make us look like fools." She accused me of betraying the family, of trying to dismantle everything they had built. She didn't see my success as a triumph. She saw it as a personal attack. It wasn't about facts or logic for her. It was personal. She was convinced I wasn't here to help, but to take over, to erase her place in the company. My father exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples, his frustration evident. He wasn't just fighting me, he was fighting himself, his own pride, his own refusal to admit that I had been right all along. But the numbers didn't lie. The company was bleeding, and my solution was the only one that had worked. I took my chance. "There's a way out of this," I said, my voice clear and confident. "A way to save the company, to secure our future, to ensure that Harding Industries continues to thrive for generations to come." I laid out my offer, a merger between Synergy Solutions and Harding Industries, a partnership that would leverage the strengths of both companies to create something even greater. Together, we could be stronger than ever. I had the technology, the innovation, and the market insight. The company had the infrastructure, the name, and the loyal clients. It wasn't a takeover. It was a survival strategy. The board members whispered amongst themselves, sensing the magnitude of the moment. Lauren's face turned red with anger, but even she knew that the numbers didn't lie. My father remained silent, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. I knew him well enough to recognize that he was calculating, measuring every possible outcome. I didn't stop. I showed them projections, charts, undeniable proof that without change, the company would sink. And then I hit him with the final blow. The reality that if I walked away now, Synergy Solutions would thrive on its own. But without me, the family business wouldn't make it another 5 years. The tension in the room was suffocating. You could hear a pin drop. My father's eyes darted to the papers in front of him. The contract was there, waiting. He had never signed anything under pressure, never made a decision without full control. And yet, this time, he had no leverage. The company needed me more than I needed them. A long silence stretched across the table. The minutes ticked by like hours. Finally, he spoke. His voice was steady, but it carried a weight I had never heard before. "I agree," he said. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Lauren let out an exasperated sigh, but the decision had been made. He agreed, but with a condition. He wanted to understand how my technology worked, to learn what I had built. Not because he doubted me, but because he wanted to see the world I had created. The contract was in front of him, and slowly, almost reluctantly, he picked up the pen. The game had changed, and this time, I wasn't just a player. I was leading it. The next morning felt different. The weight of years of tension had shifted, not gone entirely, but no longer suffocating. It was as if a dam had broken, releasing a flood of pent-up emotions and repressed desires. My father sat beside me, staring at my laptop screen, his eyes scanning lines of code with curiosity rather than skepticism. He asked questions, not out of obligation, but because he genuinely wanted to understand. It was surreal. He wasn't just accepting change, he was stepping into it. My mother walked in, arms crossed, watching the two of us in silence before finally speaking. She demanded an explanation. Not about the deal. She wanted to know what a cloud server actually was. My father chuckled, shaking his head, while I tried to simplify it in a way that made sense to her. She nodded along, pretending to understand, before giving up and deciding it wasn't worth the headache. Lauren wasn't in the room. She needed her own time to cope. The transition wouldn't be easy. There were still battles to fight, egos to manage, and years of old habits to break. But for the first time, I wasn't an outsider looking in. I had earned my place, not as an extension of my family, but as a leader in my own right. And for the first time, I knew I didn't need to fight. I had already won. That afternoon, she appeared in the office doorway, arms still crossed, but the hostility in her eyes had faded. "So you weren't completely trying to destroy the company?" I smiled. "It needed to change. We need to move forward." "Fine, good, whatever. Dad still drives me crazy." And the two of us laughed. I realized things will never be perfect, but it was the first time Lauren and I didn't feel like we were in competition. And I realized that no matter what happens, they are family, and I love them. Synergy Solutions and Harding Industries merged and grew. The technology expanded to new heights, and we helped many others in need. Dad finally stepped down and gave the CEO position to me. Lauren didn't want to take over the family business. After watching all the technological and business processes in full swing, she realized there was more to the world than just business management. A few years later, Lauren started her own charitable organization that we both actively support to this day. The company is doing better than ever. My startup has continued to grow. Together, my family is more unified, and I finally feel at peace. And to think it all started at 5 a.m. on a war room, coffee-stained table,